Here's a game. E4. I think it's time to play a French defense. Ivory bags. Okay. And so the exchange French is thought to be pretty even, but well, it's a simple way for white to play if he wants to avoid any complicated lines in the French. And you can see why it's even. It's a very symmetric position. Okay, so he played a h3 move here to prevent me from developing my bishop. So maybe I can try to stir up a little activity here. I could go for a isolated queen's pawn position by playing the immediate c5. He takes, I take. It's a move. You know, I don't really have the piece activity to justify the isolated queen's pawn. So let's see, none of my pawns are under fire. I can develop my bishop. Here's an idea. Maybe I'll develop the bishop to, yeah, he's ignoring my idea. Well, I didn't tell him what my idea was, but I'll tell you guys. My idea was to play the bishop out to a6 and force a trade, which you can do when you haven't developed this knight yet. And this is his better bishop in this pawn structure. So it seems like that was a good trade for me. Now I have to worry about developing my knight. My bishop is well posted. Probably knight to d2, d7 rather, knight to d7. It could come around, well, it could support pawn to c5, or it could come around to the king side via f8. And I don't have to worry too much about that pin right now. My knight is well protected. If he plays the rook here, though, I probably have to... No, I don't, because the knight also defends it. Anyway, my idea is to bring my knight to g6, f8 to g6, and then play h6, kicking that bishop and forcing it to either retreat or trade itself. Okay, I should take here. So that he doesn't take on e8 at an awkward time. Then I can play my knight here. And now I can play h6, and the bishop can't easily retreat. Okay, so he wants to provoke some kind of exchange here, huh? Oh, that's an interesting reply. So if I now go with h6, he can take my knight. I can take the bishop. Where can he go then? Well, I get that bishop, and he has to retreat his knight. So the knight has to go back here, and maybe I can pile up on it. Yeah, let's go with this. Just had to make sure there's no tricks. After knight takes, I take the bishop. Does that knight have some clever move? I mean, it can come here with check, but that's just giving itself up. He's got to save himself now, and the only square he can go back to is e5 that I saw. So I thought he was going to play knight e5 here. There he goes. So I can now pile up on that knight, and I should probably get my knight off of the f6 square so I can play pawn to f6 and hold on to my g pawn. It will come under fire when he plays knight f3. Yeah, so I need to do that pretty quickly, I guess. Yeah, you know, pawn to f6 is not a happy move, is it? because it gives away the g6 square. Yeah, so anyway, I weakened my pawn structure on the king side to get rid of that annoying pin. I don't know if it was worth it, but we'll see how this works out. I don't know if that was the most effective move. Where is the knight going from there? Maybe I could play f5 instead of f6. Okay, but he attacks this pawn. Or I could play g4, hitting the knight, hitting the pawn, provoking a trade. Then knight here hits the pawn. You can push knight here. I should probably just hold on to the pawn, huh? Yeah. That pawn sack does not seem to be worth a whole lot. But actually this is better than what would have happened if he'd left his knight on e5. With the knight over here, he can't easily get to the g6 square. Let's see, my knight has no squares. So maybe I need to play something like queen f7, knight f8 again. I could start with rook to e8 to get rid of the rooks on that file. Okay, so queen f7 seems indicated here to defend that knight. Can he continue to pile up? That's the question. My queen is defended, so the knight to e5 trick, taking advantage of a pin, doesn't seem to work. And anyway, yeah, my knight really had no moves. I didn't want to retreat the knight. So queen there seems necessary. Now I've got knight to f8. I've also got pawn to g6, kicking the queen back. Might be useful. He can play his queen into e6 there. Okay, let's chase that queen away. I don't like it there. Queen to e6, I trade and play my king up to f7, and that should drive his rook back. He can't come forward. My bishop is guarding e7, and these squares are guarded. So the rook would have to retreat then, unless you want to do an exchange sack. Does want to go there, okay. Well, that's pretty well forced, I think. King here. And the rook goes back. So where do we stand now? The material is even. The pawn structure is fairly symmetric. I have bishop and knight versus two knights, and we each have a rook. So if I provoke a rook trade, does his knight escape? Let's see. I can't move the rook until I move this pawn. So let's start with the pawn move. Takes away one of those squares from his knight. His knight, yeah, actually could have gone to... Oh no, my bishop was guarding that. I was just thinking if he had a way to attack my my e-pawn, a d-pawn rather, it wasn't defended. Okay, so that's his way to attack my d-pawn. So my next move after he takes back is going to be rook to e8. I'm going to either gain the e file or force a trade of rooks and just go to this minor piece end game. And don't have to worry about rook invasions. And just with bishop and knight versus the two knights. Lots of pawns. I should be slightly better. Not very much. Not very much better, but slightly better. So his knight. Where can this knight go? It has no moves. But how can I exploit that? Can I move my knight and play king here? Where would he go then? Here, here, here. Out. He could go there and provoke a trade. In any case, I should move my knight in any case because I want to activate it. So there is out, there is possible, there is out. Yeah, you know, I could try and make space for it by pushing a pawn, but let's just go like this first. This knight doesn't have a lot of good squares either. I guess his best move here is to push the push that pawn forward. That would have the annoying effect of keeping my knight out of this square. Oh, but my knight would just go back, and then I could hop into the e5 square. Yeah, that would just lead to a bunch of exchanges. I could, yeah. So he takes that square away from my knight, but I could go to the c5 square here. And his knight can come to d4. It might be an interesting square for his knight. So c5. And then start getting my king into the game. So his weak pawns are the pawn on c4, the pawn on a2. My weak pawn is this pawn on g6, and maybe the pawn on f6 I have to watch out for. My bishop is in good position to hold on to those pawns. Yeah, so he goes there, which is nice. This gives me one more option here of moving things forward. Let's start by bringing my king in, so his king can't, his knight cannot go to e6. I can just take it with my knight. So let's see, I could go to e4 here and threaten c3 check, picking up this a pawn. That would be a big help. Going after that a pawn. And he takes that away. Okay. Takes all of the options away. This guy believes in prophylaxis. So I could go to a6 to b4, hitting the pawn. And if it comes forward, the bishop is attacking it. Okay, he can hop into this square. And then from there, he might try and go after this pawn, but then my bishop is still doing a good job of guarding this square on f8. So I don't think that's going to help him. So he just went there immediately. So where's the best way to... well, I can just go back here. How is he going to defend that pawn? The thing about knights is they can take several moves to get to a square. They're clumsy pieces in that regard, and sometimes you can exploit that. Every piece he has is too far away from the a-pawn. So this will give me a little edge. I can try and push my pawn forward now. He can try and get counterplay against my pawns over here. Okay, so he's going on the attack. Now let's see, you have to be careful here. I want to go to a square where he can't check me again. So let's go here. There's no checks. So I'll have time to take this pawn. And yeah, he's got to slow down and think at this point. I don't see any good moves for this knight. Where can it go except back to where it came from? That's covered. That's where it came from. That's covered. This knight could come in with a check if I had gone to this square. That's why I came to this square on e8. So bring his other knight in, knight to c6 or knight to e6 there. Yeah, this accomplishes something. He's thinking of piling up on my c7 pawn. So I take, he can play here, and he's got 2 pieces on that square. But I can bring my king over to defend. And maybe he has something like a perpetual check. We'll see. No, I don't think so. He doesn't. I mean, some kind of perpetual where he attacks the pawn, I defend it, and he comes back and checks my king. But my king could go to c8. So we just went back there, okay? So I'm going to get my knight out of the way and start pushing the a pawn forward. I can get it up to a3 at least. And his king needs to run to this side of the board to stop it. Oh, he just takes my knight. Okay. He actually wasn't, I was not considering that. Although I don't think it helps him. I'll still get this pawn up to a3, and that will hold his king down. And with just one bishop against one knight, he has no way of using. With 2 knights, he has, you know, the idea of coordinating his knights on a single square, which I can't defend. If it was a square that the bishop can't cover. But now that idea is gone. Okay, so his king is going to go to b3, I guess, stop the pawn from coming forward. And now I can just bring my king over to the queen side and gobble up these pawns. Over to the king side, rather. And gobble up his pawns over here. So I can let him take my bishop. Should I? I have to, actually. It's still, I think, a winning endgame for me. We'll see. Because I get to these pawns pretty quickly. Oh, he just grabbed a pawn there. Ah, okay. I didn't see that idea, but let's go after these pawns anyway. My pawns get far enough advanced on the king side. It doesn't really matter. I might even sacrifice the bishop to stop. Oh, well, that's good. He's going to take the bishop and push his pawn. Well, I think he's won this one.